Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to part 1 of my Raw Techno 5 Ableton template explanation. Basically, this template I've been creating live during my live stream session. It's every 2 Mondays on this channel, and I basically create a track on scratch live. You can come around, participate, ask questions, and basically today I'm gonna go over each track, the MIDI, and how it's been made and why. And next week we will focus more on the arrangement, mixing, and mastering. Alright, so first let's have a listen how it sounds. Alright, so that gives you an idea, this kind of raw hypnotic techno track. Let's start with the kicks. And let me remove the processing. So this is just a sample I used. And so this kind of round, nice and punchy kick. Then until the whole track, almost until the end, I didn't have this saturator. I'm gonna put it on the end because that's how I add it, but I'm telling you why. Then I add a bit of rumble because I found that the kick was good by itself. So this is a rack I made a long time ago. I will put it in the description if you want to grab it. It's available for free. Basically, it's just a reverb rumble that I add. Here, the trick is always to be careful with this parameter. It's like the pre-delay, which is going to make you rumble offbeat, groovier. Then you have the GK and the low pass filter here. But yeah, it's a little of rumble. It's going to be a baseline, so the rumble is not too big. The kick is pretty punchy anyway. The kick, to tighten everything, I have to use sometimes a low cut. It's not especially like to get rid of the lower frequency and make some space, whatever. It's just like low cut usually on kick when you add the peak of peak as well with the Q here. Kind of make your kick sound better. So yeah, it's not a mixing purpose. It's more like a sound design thing. It doesn't always work, but sometimes yeah. And then I just boost here around 500 and a high chef. Making a little bit more tighter and bring a little bit of the mid-high. And I even accentuate this after later with this channel EQ, where you can see I'm gonna boost the low, the mid, and the high. You can see it was mainly to accentuate the high, obviously to help the kick cut through the mix, and then I compensate as well with boosting a little bit the low, because when you boost too much the high, you kind of lose the low, so yeah. So this is the kick I had for the most of the track, and then on the end I was like, okay, I feel like still this kick, it's missing a little bit of punch, it's kind of feeling a bit of hollow, and that's where I decided to use a saturator. Sometimes I use overdrive, and it just works. It just makes it louder and a bit punchier as well, and more in the face. And then we're gonna continue with the drum, and we're gonna talk about the bass later. Drums is nothing crazy in terms of hats. Usually it's pretty straightforward. I have this close eye hat, which is doing a kind of a classic pattern where you have one on the beat, which is a lower velocity, and one which is off beat with a stronger velocity. So you get this kind of impulsion. Pretty well, and then at the end of 2 bar you have like this roll here, and you have even a different roll after, kind of Richardson style rolling hat. And then it's nothing complicated, it's just a close hat sample. I just had a bit of attack maybe to kind of reduce the transient if it was a bit too strong, but yeah, nothing crazy, just a bit of reverb to put it in the room. So then I have the open hats, which I have 2 different patterns. And it's basically because I have 2 open hats layered. And here I have the first one, which is kind of a classic driving effect you can do with the hats. Work with the closer hat or the open hat, where you have this crescendo velocity with the one off beat, which is stronger, and the other one are like mid velocity, and then you want on the beat where the kick is, it has a lower velocity, and it always gives the takata 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 effect. Works pretty well. And then I have a second pattern where I introduce this second open hat, and yeah, it just goes like this. So this is to even accentuate the driving effect. And if you check the sound, you're gonna see it's nothing crazy much happening. It's just 2 open hats. I didn't even pitch, whatever. The only thing I've done here is you can see the attack, it's at 30 milliseconds. I like to do this on hats, open hats. You can see even the default sample has a little bit of attack anyway. By doing that, it's kind of creating this little fast aspiration at the beginning of the sample, and it just gets this groovy driving effect to your hats. So let me put it without. See, something very sharp with a lot of transient, which can be great, of course. Don't need to always do like this, and this with the aspiration effect. Then a bit of reverb. Similar, same reverb than the first one, a bit longer than I will usually do, but works well. And then drum bass is something I use often with drums, hats. Sometimes I use with compression, here not, but I like to use the crunch because it's gonna really add some mid-high, and that can help in perceived loudness. Drum bass as well, by default, add a certain color, so sometimes it works well on hats. It depends on the track. Sometimes it doesn't work. It give a color I don't like. Here was fine, and I use the transient to kind of reduce a little bit the tail of the reverb. Then we have a shaker here. So this is the percussion core kit. It's the default drum rack from Ableton. You have the cabeza and egg shaker playing at the same time, and obviously I have a bit of processing. You can see how drum bass completely changed the tone. Modernizer, it's a rack I've made. I will put the link in the description. I use a lot of my own rack. I will put the link in the description. This is basically rack. I made a video already on my channel and I explain it, and you can grab it for free. All this rack are available for free, so you can just grab it. It's basically a vocoder set in a special way. You can copy the value actually straight away if you want. And yeah, it just kind of makes sound more modern. It's quite, don't really know how to explain, but make it a little bit sharper and add a bit of transient as well. Delay. Sidechain, again, this is like a sidechain effect. So I used to use compressor to do sidechain compression, and now I just use this shaper with utility, which basically is gonna automatically duck the gain on the according to the grid. To you see you floor to floor kind of grid, which is like the same pattern than the kick, and then a bit of reverb. It's just an extra layer of drums. I like to see my drums like this. Closed hat would be more like a kind of a linear, straightforward pattern. Then you have the open hat, which is like most of the time the half-beat stuff, which really give the impulse and the groove. And then sometimes shaker can add this driving effect. So that's how I see usually my drums. Obviously, it depends per track. You can have them doing different jobs or having different patterns, but that's my like usually go-to. And then I will have the right to give this extra driving and dramatic sound, which is here, and same the pattern here is pretty classic. It's just offbeat, and you can see I put it a little bit like shifted from the grid. And it's a classic kind of ride, kind of a bit 909-ish sounding. Yeah, I use shifter. So there is two ways. Well, let me put it here. So to pitch it, I like to use shifter to pitch, especially in frequency mode. It's just kind of pitched differently than usual, and it just works well for techno. I really recommend to use that if you want to tune, not especially tune, but like change the pitch of your drum or give them a different character. It's really great. And then I have this fine tuning automation. It's just basically at the beginning, you can hear there is a kind of pitch modulation, just to add a little something. And I've done it at the intro because I first done it on the last one, where you pitch down. It just helps with the transition, to be honest, and that's what I done it. So I've done it first for the fade out, but I've done it for the fade in, and it worked well. Then I have this EQ who's gonna remove some of the annoying frequency that usually the ride have. The thing you have to keep in mind is that like a ride is kind of a resonant sound, so if you remove all the resonance, but where you don't have any more sound and character, so always be careful. Channel EQ is just like a global boost. Make it a little bit more brighter by boosting the mid, a bit more air by boosting the high. A bit of sidechain for that pumping effect. Add a bit of groove, obviously. Reverb. And just I pan it slightly on the left. Finally, for our drum, we have the clap. So here is two pattern. Again, you have a kind of a reverse clap. So it's the same clap than this one, but I just reverse it. First, I was trying during the live stream to do a kind of weird pattern. that actually you can still see them, I think, here when I was trying to experiment. But it didn't work on the end, so I didn't keep it. I just keep it classic. So it's actually there. It's not offbeat, but because it's a reverse, it's kind of playing offbeat. Yeah, just a different way to use the clap in reverse. It's almost like open hats. But you can see that I will use it also more like a normal clap here after. You see, it's gonna be playing every 2 beat, the classic one. And with the reverse, it was just to kind of having a different thing. Just wanted to do something different than the classic clap on every 2 beats. And yeah, so I alter between these 2 patterns. I mean, this one is playing just there, and then after it's just the reverse. And then it's just a bit of processing. You see, that's more like the reverb for the drums, like a room reverb that I use for the hats as well sometimes. A bit more shorter GK. Here a snake cue is really to boost this certain frequency to really make the clap cut through the mix. And then I add on the end an overdrive to really make it a bit more gritty and a bit more like... a bit more brighter. And yeah, that's pretty much for the drum. Now we're gonna go into the perc. So you have this percussion here, which is kind of a low percussion, almost like a tom that I created with Operator. This is really kind of the low perc, which gonna kind of set the mood and the ambience, because you're gonna mainly hear it at the beginning, and after it's just, you don't really hear it, but it's help with the groove. The pattern, and yeah, if I put the grid in 16, you can see you have your kick here and here, so you have one off beat and one on the kick, and after it's one off the kick, one off beat, and then it starts again. You see, like here again off beat on the beat, and then on the beat off beat, and yeah. So for the sound itself, which is kind of sound like a tom, I just use Operator. So I'm not sure if I was not designing I designed it after designing the main chord, and I just duplicate and work from down on, or if I design it from scratch, I just use Operator and kind of with FM. So obviously with FM, you know, it's not really like a rule, you just experiment. I just use this algorithm. So B is modulating A and you hear oscillator A, and D is modulating C and you hear oscillator C. But yeah, you have, this is oscillator C, this is oscillator A. I can show you if you want, but to be honest, it's like kind of a FM perc sound. Nothing much to say because I just experiment. What I like to do, yes, is playing slightly with the fine, you know, to kind of creating this weird detune sound effect. But you can see it's mainly this one modulating A. This just add a bit more extra transient. And then yeah, I use a low pass filter, 24 dB, MS20 kind of type of filter that I modulate with an envelope, with a short GK to have this percussion, a bit of resonance, bit of reverb, delay with the filter a bit more in the low to keep this kind of low perc vibe, and just bass mono everything under 60 just to be sure. But yeah. Then we have perc 2. This I think initially was kind of more a random perc. It was really like to kind of add a bit of change and modulation over the track to make it a bit more interesting. You don't have the perc playing all the time. You can see I have probably a longer pattern and I removed this dark note. So here I use microtuner. I made a video already about this if you want to find out more. It's just to kind of create my own scale, and I love to do that when I do some raw deep hypnotic techno, because you can really get out of the normal temperament scale and kind of having pitch out of tune kind of, and everything is kind of out of tune and everything sounds weird, and it's actually perfect for this kind of techno. So yeah, I use microtuner with wavetable. And then you can see I have a detune unison sound. You have two sawtooths here playing oscillator 1 and 2. That goes through a low pass filter. Low pass filter, the filter is down and it's modulating by an envelope. Here the envelope 2, which is a kind of plucky envelope, which means like you don't have sustain, you kind of have a short decay. So you open the filter very fast and you just to catch this high transient. And here as well the amplitude envelope is no sustain and short decay, so you get this nice short percussive sound. And because it's kind of a sawtooth detune, you get this, detune unison sound. And I even accentuate that by using the unison with just 2 voice and 100%. But you're gonna see that anyway, the sound's gonna be modified a lot after. Again, I use shifter with ring modulation. So it might sound weird why I have that many. During my live stream, I like to experiment as well a lot. So there is not always like a certain reason why I put this effect after the other. Sometimes you just experiment. Okay, you put one. Okay, it's not sound too bad. Then you add another one and another one. Maybe I could have the same effect with just 1 shifter or 2. I don't know. Usually I add and if it sounds good, I don't touch anything. Bit of delay. It's kind of classic dub delay where you have your filtered delay. You don't have that much feedback than it should be, but with a bit of drive as well in the input, and create this dub delay, a bit of reverb, and then sidechain, low pass everything, drum bass, like everything in mono and there. Here you get this kind of dubby effect actually with this delay. And you can see you have a LFO on the dry wet, so sometimes I will have a lot of delay, or you really hear it more, sometimes less. So yeah, really this perk with the bass. Was all created like to really kind of to set the tone, the groove, the groove idea for the track. Where this top loop I add it afterward, even after the live stream I think. It's just an extra layer of groovy drum that I wanted to add. It's just to have this extra layer at one point. It adds a bit more groove. It brings something fresh as well because it appears just on the second half of the track. Then we go into the bass. So I basically started with the kick and the bass, because I remember I wanted to have a different bass line than what I do usually. You can see the pattern. You have B, D sharp, A sharp, A sharp, C sharp, F sharp, B2. This, I'm not gonna lie, it was again experiment. I wanted to create kind of a weird bass line. One of the main things I wanted, it was this kind of almost like bubble effect. I don't know how to translate or to describe it. This kind of with the pitch modulation at the beginning. Boop, 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 boop. This kind of effect. Kind of a bubble or like bubbly kind of sound, and this is made by having a pitch envelope at the beginning of your sound, which is gonna create this pitch variation, this boop boop kind of effect. So the sound itself, like I said, it's actually pretty basic. It's just like a sine wave, but you have this pitch modulation here. So with a bit of attack and decay, and that's what gets this boop boop boop. Then after I have a low pass filter, nothing crazy. Then it's like kind of the default operator. It's really like the pitch envelope, which gives this effect. Bit of reverb. Even though it's a bass, I like to put some reverb because I always feel like if you don't put reverb, it kind of sounds a bit dry and kind of make it harder to incorporate it into the track. This is my opinion. I don't always put reverb, but sometimes, yeah. Sidechain, because it's a reverb, you want this pumping effect with the kick. Delay really gonna add some groove. I know it can sound weird, delay on the bass as well, because all this phase and stuff, but I like because it's really add groove, and you can hear it with the kick. You're gonna hear. And I remember during the live stream, even I have the bass without the delay, and I was like, okay, I like, but it's missing something. It's not groovy enough, and I just add the delay and. So still, I feel like we hear too much the kind of the mid-high, so I low pass it, and perfect. Everything under 60 Hz in mono. Alright, now we go into the chord, which was basically the main idea. So once I have my groove, if I remember well, I done the kick, then the bass, and then I probably add a bit of perc. And then I was like, okay, I need to find a main hook, a main idea. And so I probably experiment until I found this. So it's kind of a classic basic chord where you have F sharp, D sharp, and F sharp. But here the thing is really like the length of the chord. It's really what makes the groove. You're gonna see if I'm gonna reduce everything. Now about the sound itself, it's quite a long way to arrive there. Again, I use micro tuner with the same scale. So here we have 2 chains into the rack with quite some processing, because I remember I like it like the sound I found, the chord, which was sounding like this. I like it, but I felt like it was missing something. It was not strong enough, and I really had to process a lot until I achieved the point I wanted. The sound itself, it's a kind of FM sound. I use operators, so to explain you why I modulate oscillator A with the second one, and I use the sine wave at minus 5.4. Cannot explain, it's just FM, you experiment, you have oscillator modulating order at a different amount, which is your level, at different tuning with your coarse and your fine, and until you find something good, you... Here as well I use a bit of pitch modulation, you can hear it. More subtle than for the bass, but you can still hear it. And then everything is going through a low pass filter, 24 dB, MS20 again, modulating by an envelope. It's in gray because I'm gonna modulate it after for the track to make it more interesting. And then yeah, once I had the sound, this is to really make it a bit more aggressive. Delay always to make it a bit more groovier and a bit less dry. Reverb, you wanna put it into a space quite big, but not too big neither, but quite a big space. So probably first I had that, and then I still felt that it wasn't enough for the track. It was, if I remember well, during the live stream, I felt it was too weak and it was missing something. So then I had another layer. Oh, let's remove the effects to hear how it was dry. Which is actually pretty similar. I'll probably duplicate the chain effect and try to modify it. Because you can see like the frequency is the same, the filter, the pitch. So there is just a bit of change into the modulator and the algorithm as well. Like now you have, like for the bass, these two modulated. And yeah, you can see it's pretty similar to the first one with these two oscillator, which is very similar. I just add a bit more attack. And then saturator. So this is a flanger that is to add some subtle movement variation. It's a preset of mine. I will put it in the description if you want to grab it as well. I made a video already about. It's kind of a gentle, subtle flanger that's gonna kind of creating this sweeping effect, this flanger sweeping effect. And it's very slow and not too pronounced. It's just enough to kind of, you can hear that the sound is evolving and changing, but it doesn't change the tone of your original sound too much, so it's great. Modernizer is the same than before. I put it in the description to make it a bit more modern. And then stereo width is a half effect with a delay just to make it stereo. Because obviously you had the first one in the middle and this one wanted to be more stereo. And then you have, this is the same delay and this after is the same chain than the one before. You can see with the sidechain and the utility, it's the same delay and reverb than the one. So basically it's kind of the same than this one, but more on the stereo side. So it's just making your chord bigger. It's just gonna add a bit of stereo. And then I still felt it was missing some processing. So I had these two devices, the drum bus and the bright key, which is basically a corpus. You have a preset by default, which is called bright snare. And I just kind of bin from this preset and I transform it into bright key. Again, if you wanna grab it, this preset, you can just copy the parameter or you can grab it. I will put the link in the description. There is a video where I share it for free again. And basically corpus is kind of a resonator. So it's gonna kind of make the sound more resonant. And I use it in the way that it kind of enhance the sound. So very small dry wet amount. It usually works well if you want to add some mid-high. It's worked well, I use it sometimes. And then drum burst to kind of glue everything. The crunch gonna add some mid-high frequency. Here I use the compressor and a bit of the trend negatively, and I use dump to kind of reduce the too harsh frequency. The thing with operator, it's often the sound is very harsh because of the FM, you know, create this very harsh and metallic sound. So even though in operator you have a low pass filter, so you can kind of still tame of this some of this frequency, but still it's not enough, and that's why I use that. So Alright, then you have auto filter. It's just for mixing purpose. It's at the beginning to introduce the sound, otherwise I never use it. And then the same gain is for the break. I reduce the sound. I will talk about this next week in the arrangement part. And then I play with the filter amount, which gonna make it a bit more punchier, and the filter frequency. And playing both with them is add a lot of modulation. I will talk about this more next week. Here basically you can see automation. I've done it by hand with the push. I just let the track play, and I basically trick as the track was going. And yeah, so like this is always changing. It's never the same during the track. Right, then we have this pad sound. This I added afterward the live stream, but it was actually recommended during the live stream by a couple of people. They were telling me, oh, it's missing this tonal kind of pad sound on your track, which is playing the whole track, and it was true. So I added afterward. It's just like a very steady tonal sound. This is like kind of to glue kind of the backbone of the track, not the backbone, but kind of to glue and to have this kind of consistency along the track, this kind of tone to give a certain how you can say that, mood to the track. Again, it's not something like super important, and like, but it's something that if you remove, you feel it's missing something, and so that's why I like to keep. I feel it add a bit of cohesion as well to the whole thing. And to create this pad, because you see, you don't. It's not like a super complicated sound. You need something just like very tonal and straightforward. I use this raw sense rack. I put it in the description as well, which is kind of a rack I created with operator to kind of get this FM sounding sound, very much like a bell sound almost. And then you put into a lot of reverb, big amount of dry wet, and big amount of decay. And yeah, I use the micro tuner again, like to be on the same weird scale than the rest of the track. It's a matter of taste. You can keep it, remove it. I like to keep it, but yeah. Then the sound itself is hard to explain because again, it's FM modulation. So how can you explain like, oh, why did I put this algorithm and at this amount? It's just FM and experimenting. It's quite hard, but you can grab the rack. It's available for free. You can copy the parameter and get the same type of sound. It's no problem. Yeah, I didn't talk about the MIDI pattern, but it's pretty simple. You have just a simple chord F, G sharp, C, which is kind of F minor chord. Alright, then you have this track which is called Ear Candy, which sounds like this. This is something I added quite early in the track because I feel like I needed a little bit of this kind of random things popping up here and there along the track, you know, the whole track, because I had this strong lead. I had my groovy. So I felt first adding a pad was not a great idea, or at least like I felt was missing something, but a pad, like a big pad, would have took over still the show from the chord or the bass. And I feel like just having this little thing a little bit on the top high hand popping here and there and like wool works best. So I actually use a preset from, I think it's Ableton default library, I think. It's a preset from operator, molecular harp. The only thing I've done is I had the micro tuner to be still in the same kind of weird scale, but then I haven't done much. This autopan we're gonna kind of very fastly change the panning of the sound, so it's gonna really jump left right very fast. Accentuating the frequency I feel was good too, and then put some reverb. And yeah, the pattern is this 2 note I play on the push live during the live stream, and you can see it's actually not really on the grid, but I left it like this because it was good, you know. Probably it was like with the capture button from Ableton, where I was playing, and then until up I found something and I just loop it, and yeah, really like, because really add this little note impulse here and there, so pretty cool. That's pretty much it for the send. Now let's talk about some FX. So there is 2 types. There is this one, which is actually, I could have put it in the percussion, to be honest, because it's kind of ambience percussion. This is to make things groove and to add a bit of mood to the track as well. I also use, oh, that's looking like the, yeah, I think I reused this one because it will look very similar, the pattern with the flanger, the modernizer, stereo, delay, reverb, and the operator preset, but I keep just this one. If you check, it's exactly the same chain with a different EQ, and I removed, basically it was this, and I removed this and I keep just this. I probably put the filter a little bit more down, strong envelope, but yeah, what's important is like the pattern, obviously, and the sound itself. Like I said, it's the same. It's kind of a weird FM percussion. What's really good is the flanger effect, which kind of gives this phasing effect. You can hear it's pretty static, but then with the flanger, you get this nice movement. Alright, and then on the end, I add 2 FX. So this was also after the live stream, because I felt it was missing 2 things. It was missing a little bit of things popping here and there during the track, you know. It was like kind of too linear, and I needed like some percussion or some things. Yeah, like just playing here, there, kind of almost randomly, or like control randomness, and a bit of for the transition as well, for my transition, for the break and everything. I feel like it was a bit missing something, so that's why I had these 2 FX. So the first one, it's more this kind of weird sound popping here and there. I basically reuse the same preset than the ear candy. I just play chords here and there a bit randomly as well, and in a higher pitch as well than in the ear candy, but it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same preset, Molecular Harp. I just duplicate and use it. You see, I keep the autopan, I keep the reverb. There is no the EQ8 because the EQ8 was for mixing purpose, but otherwise it's the same sound. And yeah, it's just, I was with the push playing randomly along the track. Like, it's never the same. I really like play 3 chords, the whole track, and then I was playing some chords. You know, beforehand I check which chord was working, and then I just let the track run, and then I just record live here and there me playing. And it's actually helped for the transition. You're gonna hear, especially for the break and everything, it's really nice. So keep it sounding like this, huh? This kind of weird pitched. Because basically, if you play them a little bit longer than how I played for the ear candy, you get this kind of weird pitched stuff as well. So yeah. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So all this weird effect is because of that. Pretty cool. Alright, then I had still some SFX I wanted to add. First for the transition, because I felt it was still missing something. And also I wanted this kind of percussion popping here and there in the track, you know, to add a bit of variation. I started to put 4, and then on the end I've been down to 2 because I felt it was too much actually. I was kind of overdoing it. So I kind of just keep this percussion, which are like more like a transition percussion, which sound one like this and one like this. So one is kind of a reverse, is this percussion basically that I reversed. Kind of metallic percussion, just reverse it and then put into a lot of reverb, and it's just war. And yeah, I have this Perc. The only thing I've slightly processed them different. One is the reverse is with the long reverb, because you want it for the transition. It's usually well to have this kind of reverse going into a lot of reverb. And for the Perc, I have a process different. Just adds this delay, short delay, which is kind of, you see, kind of make it a bit the effect like this. Then I have, as overall process, I have first an auto pan, which is gonna kind of randomly change the panning. Once it's gonna be more on the left, more on the right. This is pretty subtle. And I have this shifter, which is gonna just add a bit of weirdness. The trick here is to detune one semitone, and then you put dry wet 50%. So you're gonna have the 50% of the dry signal, which is the normal pitch, and 50%, which is one semitone upper. And this is gonna add a very weird detune. You're gonna hear, especially with this one. Okay, but if I do it normal, without the... kind of add a bit of weirdness, and then it's a reverb that I add. And yeah, this I use for the transition, you can hear. You see, or even here. I think, yes, I pitched them differently, maybe the drum, than what there was initially. And yeah, the other perk is more like I use as well for the transition. You can see it's always at the end of the bar, kind of to announce a new element is coming. I didn't want it to overdo it too much. One thing I've done though for the transition and the break is I have this sub mixdown and the mixdown. So I already explained in the video, but it's basically allow me to send my whole track into a return effect. So basically all my tracks are going to the sub mixdown, and then I'm sending this track to a return effect, which is kind of a washout. And that usually works well for the transition. It's gonna basically create a kind of noisy washout effect. I will put the link in the description. I've made the video about this track. So that's what I'm doing. It just had a bit of noise and tail, so that's pretty handy to enter into the break to kind of smoothen a little bit the transition. And then I have this mixdown, which is kind of my master effect that I use, and on it I have a riser, which is kind of again a washout effect, but I'm gonna show you here. These are kind of DJ effects that you could do, and you have a look at as well. So I try to use less this one lately. I still use it for the break to kind of cut the low, but when there is the kick, I use it a little bit, just 2 times here. Alright, and that's pretty much it for today. Hope you like this video. If you want to grab the template, I put it in the description. It's a great way to support me. And see you next week for the arrangement, mixing and mastering part, and talking about the global idea of the track as well. So yeah, hope you like this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next week. Bye bye.